All right, let's dive into one of the most dramatic chapters in the entire Gospel of Matthew. We're talking Matthew 14. And what's so wild about it is you get these two stories back to back about two very different feasts. One ends in death, the other in life. And it really forces you to stop and think about a really big question.
And that question is this: what does real authority actually look like? Is it just about being in charge, having command and control, or is it something totally different? As we're about to see, this chapter lays out two completely opposite answers.
So, on one hand, you've got this guy, Herod Antipas. He's a ruler who's totally haunted by his own conscience, presiding over a court that's just swimming in intrigue and drama. Then on the other hand, you have Jesus. He's this teacher with massive, hopeful crowds following him, not in some fancy palace, but out in the middle of nowhere. Let's kick things off with the king's story.
Okay, so we find ourselves in Herod's court. Picture this. It's lavish, it's fancy, but there's this dark vibe. And there's a birthday party going on that's about to get really, really grim. This whole scene isn't about strength, not at all. It's a textbook example of how ego and fear can just completely poison power. Now, to really get Herod, you have to know his job title. He's a tetrarch. Sounds important, right? But it basically means he rules a fourth part of a province. So he's not the top dog, not a full-on king, and apparently he was desperate for that title. And that deep insecurity, oh man, it is the key to this whole mess.
So here's the setup, the core of the conflict. You've got this fiery prophet, John the Baptist, who's been publicly calling out Herod for a scandalous marriage to Herodias, who was actually his brother's wife. So Herod throws John in prison, but he's scared to actually kill him because the people love John, they see him as a prophet. But Herodias, she is holding a major grudge and is just biding her time looking for an opening. And that opening comes at his birthday bash. Herodias' daughter comes out and dances, and she completely mesmerizes the king. Herod, probably with a little too much wine in him, gets all caught up in the moment and makes this huge, public, and really foolish promise to give her anything she wants. So, what does she ask for? Well, coached by her mom, she asks for the one thing Herodias has been dreaming of, the head of John the Baptist, on a platter.
Yeah, the text says Herod was sorry about this, but he was trapped by his own words, his own pride. He was way more afraid of looking weak in front of all his important guests than he was of committing a murder he knew was wrong. And that just tells you everything you need to know about him. His power wasn't real strength. It was all about perception, built on a foundation of fear.
Okay, so take a breath, because right after that absolutely gruesome scene, the story slams on the brakes and does a complete 180. We're leaving the palace, leaving that whole dark mess behind, and heading out into the wilderness to meet a totally different kind of leader. So we go from Herod's deadly banquet to Jesus' miraculous meal, from a feast that takes life to one that gives it. And right here, we're going to see a type of authority that has nothing to do with ego. It's all about compassion and creation.
So Jesus hears the news about John being executed, and he understandably tries to get away to be alone. But the crowds just follow him. And his reaction is the exact opposite of Herod's self-centeredness. He's not thinking about himself. He looks out at all these people, and the text says he's moved with compassion. His power, his authority, it flows from that deep empathy.
Okay, so it's getting late. The disciples, being the practical guys they are, look around and see a huge problem. Thousands of hungry people, middle of nowhere, no food. Their solution is totally logical. Hey, let's send them all home so they can get dinner. But Jesus hits them with this completely mind-bending challenge. Nope, you give them something to eat. I mean, can you imagine? They do a quick inventory, and what do they have? It's almost a joke. 5 loaves of bread and 2 little fish, to feed a crowd that stretches as far as you can see. The task isn't just hard, it is flat out impossible from any human perspective. And yet, what happens? From that tiny lunch, 5,000 men are fed, and the text makes a point to say that's besides women and children. So we could be talking 15, maybe even 20,000 people. Every single one of them ate until they were completely full. An impossible problem met with an impossible solution. And get this, it's not just that everyone had enough, it was an overflowing abundance. When they're done, the disciples collect 12 baskets full of leftovers. Think about that contrast for a second. Herod's feast produces a severed head on a platter, a symbol of death. Jesus' meal produces an abundance of life. You just can't get a clearer picture than that. But hold on, because this chapter isn't done with us yet. Right after this amazing miracle, Jesus basically sends his disciples straight into a new test, one that's going to challenge their faith in a way that's even more raw and, frankly, terrifying. So Jesus tells the disciples to get in a boat and head across the sea while he goes up a mountain to pray. Now it's the dead of night, what they called the fourth watch, so we're talking like 3 to 6 in the morning. A massive storm kicks up, the disciples are out there totally exhausted, battling these huge waves, and then they see something that shouldn't be possible. And their immediate reaction? Pure, absolute terror. They see a figure walking on the water towards them in the middle of this storm. They don't think, oh, here comes help. They think it's a ghost, and they just scream. But then Peter, who is just always something else, right? In this crazy moment of faith, he shouts out, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you on the water." And Jesus' reply is just one word, "Come." And for a second, Peter does it. He's walking on water, as long as he's looking at Jesus. But the second he looks away, the second he sees the huge waves and feels the wind, that's when the fear hits, and he starts to sink. But here's the crucial part. Even as he's failing, even as he's sinking, Peter knows exactly who to call out to. His faith might have wobbled, but he was still facing the right direction. He just yells, "Lord, save me!" And instantly, Jesus reaches out his hand and pulls him up. It's only after Peter is safe that Jesus asks him this question, and it's so gentle. "Oh, you have little faith, why did you doubt?" It's not an angry scolding. It feels more like an invitation, a chance to explore the line between faith and fear. So they both get back in the boat, and just like that, the wind stops. And the rest of the disciples, who just saw all of this unfold, their terror completely turns into awe. And for the very first time, they say it out loud together. "Truly, you are the Son of God." Their whole understanding of who Jesus is just took a giant leap forward.
Okay, so let's step back and look at the whole picture. What's the point of all this? When you put the story of Herod's feast right next to the stories of Jesus' miracles, the meaning of real power, of real authority, just snaps into focus. Think about it. Herod's power, it's fragile. It takes life just to protect his ego. It's rooted in fear, and it ends in destruction. But Jesus' power, it's the complete opposite. It's creative, it gives life, it serves others, it's based on compassion, and it ends not in fear, but in worship. And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. This chapter shows us two completely different models of authority, one that dominates and destroys, and another that serves and creates. So the question for us is, which kind of power truly changes the world?